The oscillator section in the Moog Memorymoog is substantial and beefy, larger than the oscillator sections for, say, the Prophet 5 or the CS80. And here's how. Listen to our sawtooth wave. A big, giant Curtis chip oscillator with a wonderful sawtooth. We also have square wave, which we can adjust the pulse width of. And triangle. Keep in mind, we can also play all of these at once. That beefs up your sawtooth wave, gives a little more low end. And the square at the same time. Listen to how huge that is. And on top of all of that, if you turn the mixer up past 8, you're going to get some clipping. It actually distorts, giving you a warmer tone. And then that's all. I've just played one oscillator this whole time. Now there's 2 more. Listen to that huge, huge sound. Where else can you get that? Not very many other places in vintage analog synthesizers. And while the oscillators are Curtis chip oscillators, the filter is made up of 6 discrete Moog ladder filters. So you're getting the real Moog deal with the filter section. Let's have a listen to it. Give it a little bit of emphasis or resonance. A little bit more. And still yet more. Wow. And you can always turn on the contour amount, which is the filter envelope. It's a great sounding filter. With the Memorymoog, you not only get this massive 3 oscillator polysynth, but you also get a complete mono synth. All you have to do is go over to the mono button and press it. You basically have the same functionality as a Minimoog or more. With this, you can start off with a single oscillator. So you can emulate your favorite 1 oscillator synth or a Minimoog with only 1 oscillator on, and then of course add more. But let's not forget, you actually have 6 layers of 3 oscillators available because this is a polysynth acting like a monosynth. So you can decide how many oscillators exist in your 3 oscillator monosynth. How many layers of 3 oscillators exist. Right now we have it set to 1 layer, but we can set it so that all 18 are playing at once. That is a big sound. One of the less common sounds that you hear from Moog synthesizers of the past is the sync sound. And it's great that this polyphonic synthesizer has synchronization. Here are oscillators 1 and 2. Set to these settings, a couple of sawtooth waves. We can turn on sync and we'll get a new timbre. If If you'll remember, synchronization is when one oscillator's waveform is reset every time the other oscillator's waveform is reset. And that creates a different waveform and a different timbre. If we start messing with the frequency of the oscillator that is forced to reset, it will create unique frequencies and sounds. So here's what we're going to do. Right now we have the second oscillator sync to oscillator 1. It's making an interesting noise, but we'll make it more interesting by using the LFO modulation, a triangle wave sent to the frequency of oscillator 2. By modulating the frequency of oscillator 2, we're forcing its waveforms to be reset according to oscillator 1, even though its frequency is going all over the place. And it creates this really interesting timbre. You might be more familiar with it used in another way, using the filter envelope to control the frequency of oscillator 2. And here's what that would sound like. We'll use voice modulation to achieve that. So that's another great feature on the Memorymoog. Another really powerful function is the voice modulation. It's very much like the polymod on the Prophet 5. It allows you to use two different sources as alternate modulation sources. For example, oscillator 3. If we wanted to take the output from oscillator 3 and use it to modulate oscillator 1's frequency, it would sound like this. So you can get really interesting cross-mod effects, but at the same time, you can also do it very subtly just to add liveliness to the sound. We could do it to both oscillators that are currently playing. And it provides a huge amount of richness, even though it's an audio rate oscillator. We also have the ability to direct it to pulse width. So if we wanted to go in, turn oscillator 3 down to low, take off keyboard control, now oscillator 3 is our low frequency oscillator for pulse width. So we could direct that to pulse width, that pulse width modulation to oscillator 2. Let's choose a triangle wave. And then we could use the LFO as the source for pulse width modulation in oscillator 1. Get an incredibly rich noise. You can't do this on a lot of synthesizers. Use a third oscillator as an LFO and use the LFO as another LFO and use both of them to modulate the pulse width of two different oscillators simultaneously. Makes an incredibly rich sound. Also, if we want to, we can use the filter contour as a modulation source for something other than the filter and direct it to whatever we want it to, including pulse width. This is the pulse width modulation on oscillator 2's square wave is being created by the filter envelope. And if we want to go back and listen to how oscillator 3 can modulate the filter. And don't forget that this is polyphonic. The filter is getting modulated by the 6 different oscillators that exist in oscillator 3. And if we wanted to put them back up into the high range, we can add a whole bunch of fuzziness to the filter, or what we call fatness. The voice modulation section has so many different uses that we could point out, but those are just a few. The Moog Memorymoog also features an arpeggiator. The arpeggiator has different modes. There's down, for example. There's up. There's up and down. And this one is latched and in order. There are also many more arpeggiator settings.